Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Tuesday, November 20th, 2018. Today I'm going to recap last night's awesome Monday Night Football game between the Chiefs and the Rams. Go over your NBA results from last night as well as the NHL and college basketball. Look ahead to today's slate in those three sports. I'm going to discuss a big Major League Baseball trade that happened around dinner time last night. In the wake of me doing my off-season predictions podcast, or not just the podcast, but you know what I mean, like towards the end of yesterday's podcast. And then I'll go through best memories of NFL and MLB teams over the last 20 years or so. And I'm going to go over why each team should be thankful as a part of a little Thanksgiving thing I'm doing for the podcast. Tomorrow I'll be doing NBA and NHL for that. And I'm going to do my picks for college football for tonight and my best bet of the night. All right. NFL last night, in what was just a phenomenal football game, the Rams defeated the Chiefs 54-51. This was probably the best regular season football game I've ever seen. The Rams go to 10-1. The Chiefs go to 9-2. It was an all-time classic for sure. Jared Goff, 31 of 49, 413 yards and 4 touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes, 33 of 46, 478 yards, 6 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So, a big game for Mahomes. A couple costly interceptions that cost the Chiefs the game. Rams actually got on the board first with a touchdown to Robert Woods. Greg Zuerlein misses the extra point. So it's 6-0 Rams. And then Josh Reynolds catches a 4-yard pass from Jared Goff. 13-0 Rams. Chiefs get on the board. Tyreek Hill, 25-yard pass from Patrick Mahomes to make it a 13-7 game. Second quarter, Zuerlein field goal. 16-7. Butker field goal makes it 16-10. Chiefs take their first lead of the game on a 21-yard pass from Patrick Mahomes to Kareem Hunt to make it 17-16. 11-yard fumble return for touchdown by Samson Ebukam to give the Rams a 23-17 lead. Then the half ends with Patrick Mahomes throwing a touchdown pass to Chris Conley. Butker misses the extra point, so we're tied at 23 at halftime. Third quarter, Jared Goff 7-yard run to open the third quarter to give the Rams a 30-23 lead. The Chiefs answer back. Mahomes to Travis Kelce for 4 yards to tie it up at 30. Greg Zuerlein go-ahead field goal to make it 33-30. 25-yard pick six by Ebukam. So Ebukam with 2 touchdowns, 1 fumble return, and 1 pick six. 40-30 Rams. The over hit in the third quarter in this game. Fourth quarter, Chiefs get within 3 on a 73-yard bomb from Mahomes to Hill to make it 40-37. Chiefs take the lead on a 2-yard fumble return by Allen Bailey. 44-40 Chiefs. Then the Rams answer back. 7-yard touchdown pass from Goff to Gerald Everett for them to take a 47-44 lead. The Chiefs get the lead back. 10 yards from Patrick Mahomes to Chris Conley. 51-47 Chiefs. Then 40 yards from Goff to Everett for the Rams to take a 54-51 lead. Chiefs get the ball back. The interesting thing here is that Mahomes threw a second interception to Marcus Peters. And then the Chiefs, Andy Reid, had all 3 of his timeouts. So the Rams took 3 knees in a row. Reid smartly uses his timeouts. Rams have to punt. Chiefs get the ball back. And Mahomes throws a bullet, and that's intercepted by LaMarcus Joyner to seal the win for the Rams. Like I said, phenomenal football game. Say what you want. These are 2 great offensive teams. Even the defense chimed in on some scoring for both sides. So, I would sign up for that for the Super Bowl. But you never know. The Saints have something to say about it. And let's face it, even though they've been a little inconsistent this year, Tom Brady and the Patriots have something to say. Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers also in the conversation. You can't rule out the Chargers in the AFC. In the NFC, as well as the Saints, you have the surging Chicago Bears, who are a dark horse in the NFC. The Carolina Panthers have to be mentioned as a contender, even though they lost a brutal game on Sunday. And don't sleep on the Minnesota Vikings. They've been a little Jekyll and Hyde this year, but they've just had a tough schedule and some tough injuries, and if they make the playoffs, you never know with that defense. Kirk Cousins has disappointed in big spots before, but he has more talent on his roster than he did in Washington, so that should help him down the road if they were to go to the postseason. We'll talk more about football tomorrow as we'll do the picks for Week 12, because I'm not doing a podcast Thursday or Friday this week, so we'll do the picks for Week 12 tomorrow. NBA. Big slate. Last night, the Hornets defeated the Celtics 117-112. Big win for Charlotte to go to 8-8. Boston drops to 9-8. Kemba Walker had 43 points. He actually leads the NBA in scoring now. Jeremy Lamb had 18. Billy Hernan-Gomez had 14 off the bench. Kyrie Irving had 27. Jason Tatum had 18. Al Horford and Jaylen Brown each had 10. Daniel Theis had 10 off the bench, and Marcus Smart had 14 off the bench. The Pistons defeated the Cavaliers 113-102. As Detroit goes to 8-6, Cleveland drops to 2-13. Andre Drummond had 23 points and 16 boards. Blake Griffin and Reggie Bullock each had 21. Reggie Jackson had 13. Ish Smith off the bench had 11. Colin Sexton had 18. Rodney Hood had 12. C.D. Osmond and Tristan Thompson each had 10. Jordan Clarkson had 16 off the bench. Ante Zizic had 12 off the bench. Big win for the Cavaliers, even though they're terrible, tomorrow night at home against LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers on national TV. So it wouldn't be dumbfounding if they got up for LeBron a little bit tomorrow night. The Pacers defeated the Jazz 121-94 without Victor Oladipo. Impressive win for Indiana to go to 11-6. Utah drops to 8-9. Bogdanovich, 21 points. Thaddeus Young and Miles Turner each had 12. Domantas Sabonis had 19 off the bench, as well as Aaron Holiday, who's been improving as the year has gone on. Doug McDermott had 12 off the bench. Ricky Rubio had 28. Rudy Gobert had 12 points and 11 boards. Jay Crowder had 14 off the bench. The 76ers defeated the Suns 119-114. Sixers go to 12-7. They're 4-1 with Jimmy Butler. Suns drop to 3-13. Joel Embiid, 33 points and 17 boards. Ben Simmons, 19 points, 11 boards, and 9 assists. J.J. Redick had 17. Jimmy Butler had 16. Mike Muscala had 19. Devin Booker had 37 with 8 assists. DeAndre Ayton had 17 with 9 boards. T.J. Warren had 21. Mikal Bridges had 13. Trevor Ariza had 10.7 boards, 5 assists. Former Sixer Ricardo Holmes had 10 off the bench. The Clippers defeat the Hawks 127-119. The Hawks had to lead the majority of this game. The Clippers avoid the trap as they go to 11-5. Hawks drop to 3-14. Montrezl Harrell had 25 and 11 off the bench. Tobias Harris had 24 and 8. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 16. Mike Scott had 18 and 7 off the bench. Bojan Marjanovic had 12 off the bench. Lou Williams had 16 with 11 assists and 7 boards off the bench. Meanwhile, for Atlanta, Trae Young had 25 points and 17 assists. Taurean Prince had 21. Alex Len had 12. John Collins had 18 off the bench. He should be starting for the Hawks. Dwayne Dedmon had 13 and 12 off the bench. The Grizzlies defeated the Mavericks 98-88. Grizzlies go to a surprising 11 and 5. You can make a case this is the biggest surprise in the NBA. And Dallas drops to 7 and 9. Mike Conley, 28 points, 5 boards, 7 assists. Marc Gasol, 17 points and 15 boards. Jaren Jackson Jr. had 13. Garrett Temple had 12. JaMychal Green had 12 and 9 boards off the bench. Dennis Smith Jr. had 19. DeAndre Jordan had 17 and 20. Luka Doncic had 15 with 10 boards. Dorian Finney-Smith had 13. Harrison Barnes had 10. The Bucks defeated the Nuggets 104-98. The Bucks go to 12 and 4. Denver drops to 10 and 7. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 29 points and 12 boards. Eric Bledsoe, 23 points, 5 boards, 5 assists. Chris Middleton, 13.6 boards, 5 assists. Malcolm Brogdon, 13 points and 8 boards. Nikola Jokic, 20 points, 5 boards, 5 assists. Jamal Murray, 17 points, 8 boards, 9 assists. Gary Harris, 14.6 assists. Malik Beasley off the bench, 12 points. He's been improving as a player. And Monte Morris had 10 off the bench. The Pelicans defeated the Spurs 140-126. Pelicans go to 10 and 7. San Antonio drops to 8 and 8. Anthony Davis, phenomenal again, 29 points and 9 boards. Nikola Mirotic had 13 with 5 boards. Drew Holiday had 21 points and 9 assists. Etuan Moore had 24. Julius Randle had 21 points, 14 boards, and 10 assists off the bench. Frank Jackson had 12 off the bench. Bryn Forbes had 20. DeMar DeRozan had 21 with 6 boards and 5 assists. Rudy Gay had 17 with 6 boards. Dante Cunningham had 19 points and 7 boards. Jakob Poeltl had 11 off the bench, and Marco Bellinelli had 11 off the bench. The Kings defeat the Thunder 117-113. I said that this was a possible trap spot for the Thunder. They got trapped. Sacramento goes to 9 and 8. OKC drops to 10 and 6. Buddy Hield, who I think has been one of the more improved players in the league, had 25 points. Iman Shumpert had 23. Nemanja Bjelica had 12 with 8 boards. Marvin Bagley off the bench, 15 points and 13 boards. Boban Bogdanovic had 16 points and 5 boards off the bench. Paul George had 27 and 9 boards. Steven Adams, 11 and 15 boards. Russell Westbrook, 29 points, 13 boards, 7 assists, so he's back from injury. Hamidou Diallo had 18. And Timothy Luwawu Karabat had 11 with 5 boards off the bench. Tonight's NBA slate is small compared to last night. They only had 4 games on the slate. At 7 o'clock, you have the Raptors and the Magic. Do the Raptors get caught up in a trap spot? Do the Magic continue their surprise success early on? That's credit to Steve Clifford, by the way. He's turning out to be a pretty good hire. Clippers-Wizards, is this a trap spot for the Clippers? Going into a dysfunctional DC where the Wizards came out and said that they don't mind trading John Wall and Bradley Beal. So there are obviously 2 big names available at the trade deadline right there. I could see the Clippers going after one of them, potentially. Because I know they're star hunting and both of those guys are stars. And at 7:30, you have the Trailblazers at the Knicks. Is this a trap game for the Blazers? Maybe. The Knicks are a team that usually hangs around at home. The only time they really lost badly at home this year was against the Magic about a week and a half ago on a Sunday night. They usually keep the good teams close at home. You saw that with Golden State a few weeks ago. You saw that with Boston early in the season, even though Boston's turning out to be a bit of a disappointment. And then the Nets at the Heat. This is a big spot for both of these teams, especially Miami, to get right a little bit. NHL. Nice slate last night. The Rangers defeated the Stars 2-1. Yet another big win for the Rangers to keep their surprise start going. They're 11-8-2. Dallas drops to 11-8-2. The number 1 star of the game with the goal, Philip Hedl. Number 2 star of the game with the goal, Jimmy Vesey. The number 3 star of the game with the goal, Tyler Seguin. The Maple Leafs defeated the Blue Jackets 4-2. The Leafs go to 15-6-2. Columbus drops to 12-7-2. Number 1 star of the game with 37 saves on 39 shots, Frederik Andersen. Number 2 star of the game with 2 assists, Mitch Marner. And the number 3 star of the game with 2 goals, Zach Hyman. The Sabres defeated the Penguins 5-4 in overtime. Buffalo goes to 13-6-2. Pittsburgh drops to 7-8-4. The number 1 star of the game with a goal and assist, Jack Eichel. Number 2 star of the game with a goal and assist, Zach Bogosian. And the number 3 star of the game with the goal, Jake Gutzel. The Capitals defeated the Canadiens 5-4 in overtime. Caps go to 10-7-3. Montreal drops to 11-6-4. Number 1 star of the game with 2 goals, Alexander Ovechkin. The number 2 star of the game with the goal and assist, Jeff Petrie. And the number 3 star of the game with 2 assists, John Carlson. The Panthers defeated the Senators 7-5. Big win for Florida, much needed, as they go to 8-7-3. Ottawa drops to 9-9-3. Number 1 star of the game with 4 assists, Juho Lammikko. Number 2 star of the game with 2 goals and an assist, Matt Duchene. And the number 3 star of the game with 2 assists, Aaron Ekblad. The Kings defeated the Blues 2-0 as the Kings go to 7-12-1. The Blues drop to 7-9-3. The number 1 star of the game with 29 saves on 29 shots, Cal Peterson. That's like their 3rd string goaltender. Number 2 star of the game with the goal, Matt Luff. And the number 3 star of the game with an assist, New King, Carl Hagelin. The Predators defeated the Lightning 3-2. Another big win for the Predators as they go to 15-5-1. Tampa drops to 14-6-1. Number 1 star of the game with the goal and assist, Ryan Johansson. Number 2 star of the game with 29 saves on 31 shots, Picarina. And the number 3 star of the game with 2 assists, Matthias Ekholm. The Flames destroyed the Golden Knights 7-2. Great win for Calgary as they go to 12-8-1. Vegas drops to 9-12-1. Number 1 star of the game with a goal and 3 assists, Johnny Gaudreau. Number 2 star of the game with 2 goals and 2 assists, Matt Tkachuk. And the number 3 star of the game with 2 goals and assists, Sean Monahan. The Jets defeated the Canucks 6-3. Nice win for Winnipeg. They go to 12-5-2. Vancouver drops to 10-11-2. Number 1 star of the game with a hat trick, Patrick Laine. Number 2 star of the game with a goal and an assist, Nikolai Goldobin. And the number 3 star of the game with a goal and 3 assists, Kyle Connor. Only one game on the board tonight, and that is the Oilers at the Sharks. The Oilers fired Todd McClellan early this morning, and they are replacing him with former Blues coach Keith Hitchcock. So that's going to be interesting. McClellan, I felt like, deserved the axe at the end of last year after that team badly underachieved. Everyone pegged them as the Stanley Cup favorites going into last season. They didn't even make the playoffs. So this probably should have happened after last season. And with 4 coaching changes in the NHL already, and they're all in the Western Conference, and I think there's more coming. I think potentially if things continue to get rocky in Pittsburgh, I wouldn't be stunned if Mike Sullivan was out of a job. It wouldn't dumbfound me, even though he has 2 cups. It's what have you done for me lately? And speaking of coaches getting fired, last night the Blues fired Mike Yeo, and that team underachieved badly last year and off to a slow start this year. Another coach that probably should have been fired at the end of last year. I know Yeo did a nice job a couple years ago after they traded away Kevin Shattenkirk and they went to the playoffs. After Keith Hitchcock got fired, Yeo took over and did a nice job that year. And Yeo, I thought, did a great job with the Wild when he was the Wild coach. Got those teams to overachieve year after year. But now the Blues bring in former Flyers coach Craig Berube to be their intern coach. In the Oilers case with Hitchcock, he's their actual permanent head coach. So it's crazy to think that we've had 4 coaching changes and it's not even Thanksgiving yet in the NHL. This is just bizarre. And as I mentioned, I think there's a chance Pittsburgh lets go of Mike Sullivan. And another one to keep an eye out is Anaheim with Rick Carlisle. I'm surprised he wasn't let go after even last year. Even though that team made the playoffs a year ago, there was talk that they were going to let him go. That ultimately didn't happen. They overachieved last year. I thought they'd overachieve again this year with the good defense and John Gibson in goal. But that team's underachieved this year. So I think that's one to keep an eye out for. So there could potentially be 6 but once the year ends. So that would just be crazy in the NHL. And in the NBA, we've had a couple firings. We had Ty Lue. And I think we had another NBA firing. No, it wasn't a coach. It was Ryan McDonough, the GM, and that was before the season, the GM of the Suns, former GM of the Suns. But yeah, it's crazy to think that teams are in no rush or a rush to fire coaches in whatnot. They're wasting no time. College basketball yesterday. Some interesting results. Some of them I already went over on yesterday's podcast, but I'll repeat them again. Number 16, Clemson defeats Akron 72-69. Clemson goes to 4-0. Akron drops to 3-1. Tulane defeats South Dakota State 84-80. Tulane goes to 2-1. South Dakota State goes to 3-2. Eastern Kentucky defeats Kennesaw State 100-81. East Kentucky goes to 3-3. Kennesaw drops to 1-5. Georgia defeats Illinois State 80-68. Good win for Georgia and Tom Crean to go to 3-1. Illinois State drops to 2-2. UC Irvine defeats UTSA 65-56. Irvine goes to 5-0. UTSA goes to 0-4. Utah Valley defeats Hartford 72-65. And Utah Valley goes to 2-3. Hartford goes to 1-4. Number 8, Auburn defeats Xavier 88-79 in overtime. This was a great game down in Maui. Auburn goes to 4-0. Xavier goes to 2-2. Xavier, you gotta give them credit. They hung around with the top 10 team in Auburn, and maybe they're better than expected and end up in the field of 64. We'll see about them. Northern Iowa defeats Old Dominion 54-53. Northern Iowa goes to 3-2. Old Dominion drops to 2-3. Sam Houston State defeats Jackson State 75-60. Sam Houston goes to 3-3. Jackson State goes to 0-4. Georgia State defeats St. Bonaventure 75-65. Georgia State goes to 3-1. Bonaventure drops to 1-3. Long Beach State defeats Iona 86-85. Long Beach goes to 2-3. Iona drops to 1-2. Louisiana defeats Colorado State 91-73. Louisiana is one of the favorites in the Sun Belt Conference this year. They're 2-2. Colorado State drops to 3-1. That was their first loss of the year. Bowling Green defeats Hampton 81-79. Bowling Green goes to 3-2. Hampton drops to 1-3. Number 1, Duke defeats San Diego State 90-64 in Maui. Duke's just phenomenal. They're just going to keep destroying teams. They're 4-0. San Diego State's 2-1. San Diego State's a good team, so that's another quality win for Duke. Oregon State defeats Penn 74-58. Oregon State goes to 4-1. Penn goes to 4-2. High Point defeats Air Force 69-62. High Point goes to 2-3. Air Force goes to 2-3. Loyola Chicago defeats Richmond 82-66. Loyola Chicago goes to 4-1. Richmond goes to 2-2. Nebraska defeats Missouri State 85-62. Nebraska goes to 4-0. And Mizzou State drops to 3-1. Rutgers defeats Eastern Michigan 63-36. Rutgers improves to 3-1. Eastern Michigan drops to 4-2. Number 14, Florida State defeats Canisius 93-61. Great win for Florida State. They're 3-0. Canisius drops to 1-2. East Carolina defeats Rio Grande 69-64. East Carolina goes to 3-2. Rio drops to 3-2. Rider defeats Coppin State 87-67. Rider goes to 1-1. Coppin State drops to 0-5. UMass defeats Arkansas Pine Bluff 92-60. UMass goes to 3-2. Pine Bluff drops to 0-4. Albany defeats Sunny Anota 79-62. Albany improves to 2-2. Colgate defeats Binghamton 76-68. Colgate goes to 4-1. Binghamton drops to 1-4. Robert Morris defeats Stetson 81-72. Morris goes to 3-2. Stetson drops to 1-4. Charlotte defeats Longwood 42-39. That's a very low scoring game. Charlotte goes to 2-2. Longwood drops to 4-1. That was Longwood's first loss of the year. Cincinnati defeats Western Michigan 78-52. Cincinnati goes to 3-1. Western drops to 3-2. Marshall defeats NCAT 95-71. Marshall goes to 4-0. NCA&T drops to 0-5. Greensboro defeats Prairie View 74-66. Greensboro goes to 4-1. Prairie View drops to 1-4. ETSU defeats Chicago State 86-61. East Tennessee goes to 3-2. Chicago State drops to 0-6. Oakland defeats Defiance 91-47. Oakland improves to 2-3. Delaware State defeats St. Elizabeth 80-47. Delaware State improves to 1-4. St. John's defeats Cal 82-79. The Barclays Center. St. John's goes to 4-0. Cal drops to 1-2. Creighton defeats Boise 94-82. Creighton goes to 3-1. Boise drops to 1-2. Toledo defeats Florida Gulf Coast 90-62. Impressive win for Toledo to go to 3-1. Gulf Coast drops to 2-3. Charleston Southern defeats Trinity Baptist 98-49. Southern goes to 3-2. Mercy defeats Loyola Maryland 91-63. Mercy goes to 1-3. That was their first win of the year. Maryland Loyola drops to 1-4. Number 12 Kansas State defeats Mizzou 82-67. Good win for Kansas State to go to 5-0. Mizzou goes to 3-2. Number 7 North Carolina defeats St. Francis, Pennsylvania 101-76. UNC goes to 5-0, and St. Francis drops to 1-3. Vandy defeats Liberty 79-70. Vandy goes to 4-0. Liberty drops to 3-1. Houston defeats Northwestern State 82-55. Houston goes to 3-0. Northwestern State drops to 1-4. Tulsa defeats Little Rock 88-78. Tulsa goes to a perfect 4-0. Little Rock drops to 2-2. South Alabama defeats Southeast Missouri State 79-58. South Alabama goes to 3-2. And Southeast Missouri drops to 3-3. Southern Illinois defeats Howard 83-69. Southern Illinois goes to 2-2. Howard drops to 4-1. That was their first loss this year. Oral Roberts defeats Ecclesia 109-72. Oral Roberts goes to 2-4. Lamar defeats Arlington Baptist 105-40. Lamar goes to 3-2. Utah State defeats St. Mary's 80-63. That's an impressive win for Utah State to go to 5-0 on the year. St. Mary's drops to 3-1. That was their first loss of the year. South Dakota defeats UMBC 58-52. South Dakota goes to 3-2. UMBC drops to 4-2. Boston College defeats Wyoming 88-76. Boston College goes to 3-1. Wyoming drops to 1-4. Arizona defeats Iowa State 71-66. An impressive win for Sean Miller to go to 4-0. Iowa State drops to 3-1. There's their first loss this year. Washington State defeats Cal Poly 84-70. Wazoo goes to 2-1. Cal Poly drops to 1-2. UTEP defeats East New Mexico 66-59. UTEP goes to 2-2. Idaho State defeats Bethesda 115-60. Idaho State improves to 2-2. Texas Tech defeats USC 78-63. Good win for Texas Tech to go to 4-0. USC drops to 2-2. VCU defeats Temple 57-51. Impressive win for VCU. Much needed win for that conference. VCU's 4-0. Temple drops to 4-1. That was their first loss this year. Portland defeats Lewis and Clark 77-57. Portland improves to 3-2. Number 6 Nevada defeats Cal Baptist 90-55. Nevada is 4-0. Cal Baptist 2-2. Arizona State defeats number 15 Mississippi State 72-67. Great win for Bob Hurley and the Sun Devils to go to 4-0 as the Bulldogs drop to 3-1. Number 17 UCLA defeats Presbyterian 80-65. UCLA goes to 4-0. Presbyterian drops to 3-3. Number 3 Gonzaga defeats Illinois 84-78 in Maui. Gonzaga goes to 4-0. Illinois drops to 1-2. Today's slate, there's some games underway, and some of them are final. Games that are final, South Dakota State defeats UTSA 99-79. South Dakota State goes to 4-2. UTSA drops to 0-5. Illinois State defeats Akron 73-68. Illinois State goes to 3-2. Akron drops to 3-2. Jacksonville State defeats Western Carolina 84-53. Jacksonville State goes to 1-3. That was their first win of the year. Western Carolina drops to 1-4. Going on right now, Florida Gulf Coast and Colorado State, Clemson and Georgia, and Xavier San Diego State. Xavier San Diego State's a big game for both of those programs. Winner of that game could very well be an at-large team in the tournament. Currently on ESPN2 right now, as San Diego State just hits a three-pointer to get within 8. It's a 19-11 Xavier lead right now. At 3 o'clock, you have North Florida Southern Miss, 4:30 on ESPN2 from Maui, Illinois, and Iowa State. 5 o'clock from Barclays Center, Temple and Cal. Tulane and UC Irvine Gulf Coast Classic. Cayman Islands Classic, St. Bonaventure, Boise. Cancun Challenge, SMU and Bradley. UT Arlington and Indiana at 7. By the way, Bradley SMU is a 6 o'clock game. Also at 7 o'clock, number 23 Ohio State and Samford. Duquesne and Notre Dame. St. Peter's NC State. Nichols and Ole Miss. The Citadel James Madison. Cornell Yukon. Quinnipiac New Hampshire. Gotham Classic Radford William and Mary. NC Central George Mason. Holy Cross Albany. NJIT and Wagner. North Alabama hosts Martine Method. Kentucky Christian at VMI. Maryland Eastern against Mercer in the Wolfpack Classic. Buckeye Classic, you have SC State and Purdue, Fort Wayne. Navy and Morgan State. Southeast Louisiana and Mississippi State. Omaha and Bethune-Cookman. Savannah State and Kent State. Methodist Coastal Carolina. Regent Norfolk State. USC Missouri State in the Hall of Fame Classic. Cayman Islands, Sam Houston State and East Tennessee. 7:30, Louisiana Tech coast Tougaloo. Mobile at McNeese. Trevecca at Belmont. Barclays Center, 7:30, St. John's VCU. That's the championship game in that series. I like St. John's there. Toledo, Louisiana in the Gulf Coast. Cayman Islands, Georgia State, Creighton. 8 o'clock, you have 18 TCU hosting Lipscomb. Maine at North Texas. That's the Wolfpack Classic. That actually might be neutral site. That's my bad. LIU Milwaukee's a campus game. North Dakota hosts Concordia, New England. Maui Invitational, big one on ESPN, 8 o'clock. Number 8 Auburn against number 1 Duke. That's probably a very intriguing game. I don't want to say game of the year because I think that the Kentucky-Duke game was hyped up more than this. I think Duke wins again by double digits. I like Auburn a lot, and I think they will eventually finish in the top 3 in the SEC, but they're nowhere near the level of the Blue Devils, so I expect the Duke to take care of business in this game. 8:30 in the Cancun Challenge, you have Wright State and Penn State. Marist and CVNF Austin. Grambling hosts Champion Christian. The Vancouver Showcase, you have Santa Clara and Minnesota. Texas Tech and Nebraska in the Hall of Fame Classic at 9:30. Pacific and UNLV is 10 o'clock. Tennessee State and Cal State Northridge. Colorado San Diego. Number 21 Oregon hosts Green Bay. In Maui, you have Arizona against number 3 Gonzaga. That's an intriguing game. Big game for Sean Miller and the Wildcats. I believe this was if I'm not mistaken, was this a tournament game a few years ago? Or it was supposed to be, and Xavier upset Arizona to go to the Elite Eight. That's what it was. And that was the year that North Carolina defeated Gonzaga in the title game. I think Gonzaga wins, but Sean Miller's group hangs around. Sean Miller, these guys are going to show up for this one, but I think Gonzaga gets the win. Sacramento State and UC Davis, and then Vancouver Showcase Texas A&M against Washington. That's an 11:30 game on ESPN2. Big college basketball news before I move on. This has to be mentioned. The number 1 prospect of 2019, James Wiseman, a center from Memphis, commits to Memphis over Kentucky. That's a big get for Penny Hardaway and the Memphis program. That's going to put Memphis back on the map. They're probably the 2019 favorites to win the AAC. So that program's going to be back and relevant in that conference. They're off to a solid start this year. They gave LSU a game a few weeks ago, but they're not going to see Wiseman on the court until next season. That's just big news for that program. Big baseball trade happened about an hour after I did a podcast in which I revealed off-season predictions for baseball. The New York Yankees ship away top prospect Justice Sheffield along with their number 9 prospect Eric Swanson and outfield prospect Don Thompson Williams to the Seattle Mariners for James Paxton. This is a necessary move made by the Yankees to upgrade their rotation. Brian Cashman's under a lot of pressure this offseason to close the gap between them and the Red Sox in the American League East. And he just made that gap a little shorter by getting this acquisition done. He'll be at top of that rotation with Masahiro Tanaka and Luis Severino. You know that Cashman wants to get one more starter, whether that's via trade or free agency. We'll see. Patrick Corbin, a lot of people are linking him to the Yankees. He's been linked to the Yankees for a long while now. Maybe they surprise us and trade for one more arm. Do they re-sign Jay Happ after trading for him at the deadline? It's going to be interesting to see. And I'm very fascinated to see what else happens. Meanwhile, for Seattle, it's time to reboot. They came out a few weeks ago and said that they're retooling their roster, and the only players that they wouldn't trade were Mitch Haniger, Marco Gonzalez, and closer Edwin Diaz. And their biggest chip was Paxton. Sheffield's a nice get, but he's a little overrated according to people that I speak to in the industry, and from what I've seen, he really doesn't have great control. He was once projected an ace. Now he's projected to be a number 3 starter. James Paxton is better than that. So as long as Paxton stays healthy, the Yankees got themselves an above-average starter in Paxton, who reminds me a little bit of Garrett Cole in the sense that Cole, like Paxton, was dealing with some injury problems, pitching on a subpar team in the Pirates, and then he gets traded to a contender in the Astros and thrives. I can see a similar scenario panning out with Paxton when he gets traded to the contender, that is. He gets traded to the Yankees, and then maybe he can end up thriving. He's a lefty, and lefty pitchers usually do well in Yankee Stadium, shutting down the lefty hitters from the short porch and right. So it's a big get for the Yankees. A little bit risky because of his injury history, but not a bad move per se. And not a bad move for Seattle either for getting Sheffield in the deal, who might turn out to the ace that the Yankees thought he could have potentially been when they got him in the Andrew Miller deal back in 2016. Or he might be projected what they're saying right now, which is a number 3 starter. And Swanson could be a swing guy perhaps. And then the outfielder that was in the deal was coming off his best season in the minors, so Brian Cashman selling high a little bit on him. Thanksgiving is in 2 days from now, and I want to go over some memories and why teams should be thankful. And I'm doing this for every team, even though some teams in sports are in rocky places right now, and others are among mountaintops. Today I'm going to do the NFL and MLB best memories, and why each of those 62 teams should be thankful. Tomorrow I'm going to do basketball and hockey and why those 61 teams should be thankful. Yes, 61. Don't forget the Vegas Golden Knights are a team now. So first I'm going to go with the NFL. I'm going to go in alphabetical order. I'm going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. And there's a lot of good memories from that franchise over the last few years. And the one that stuck out to me was Patrick Peterson returns a 99-yard punt in overtime to win a game for the Cardinals over the Rams.
Good high kick. Peterson looks around. Backpedals, takes it at the 2. Trying to get outside. Turns it upfield. Patrick Peterson gets by the punter. Peterson may go all the way. He will. Patrick Peterson wins it for the Cardinals.
On the call there was Sam Rosen, who was actually the voice of the New York Rangers on the MSG Network. He does football for Fox, and he happened to get a great game between the Cardinals and the Rams. Next one is the Atlanta Falcons, who had some good memories through the years, even though there's a lot of bad ones. And this is the one that stood out to me.
Falcons overload the right side of the Patriots offensive line. Pass is picked. Intercepted. Robert Alford. He's gone. There are no flags. And the Falcons add to their lead. Alford with a pick 6.
That was Robert Alford's pick 6 off of Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. And that gave the Falcons a 21-0 lead after the extra point was made. And that was perhaps the best memory, because after that was very bad for the Atlanta Falcons, and that was obviously Joe Buck on the call on Fox. Next up is the Baltimore Ravens. They also had a great Super Bowl run a few years back. And there's one that obviously stood out more than the others, and this was probably the biggest touchdown pass of Joe Flacco's career, perhaps, that got that run going a little bit.
Great speed, but that's not going to get it done. Flacco stepping up and throwing deep down the far sideline. Caught into the end zone. Touchdown, Jacoby Jones.
That was Joe Flacco's 70-yard touchdown pass to Jacoby Jones in the divisional round of the 2012 NFL playoffs against the Denver Broncos, and that was Greg Gumbel on the call on CBS. Next up, the Buffalo Bills. They really didn't have many great memories through the years. A lot of it's been bad. Before I give you my memory of them, or best memory, I almost chose Andy Dalton's touchdown to A.J. Green that clinched a playoff spot for the Buffalo Bills last year. But that's not fair to the Bills, because that was more of a Bengals moment than a Bills moment, because that was Andy Dalton and A.J. Green, not the Bills doing it themselves. That was a favor rather than actual moment for the Bills franchise. So here's mine.
This is for the win.
The Bills upset the Patriots in 2011. That was Marv Albert on the call on CBS. Ryan Fitzpatrick led the Bills to a come-from-behind win in 2011 as the Bills kicked the game-winning field goal to upset their arch rivals, and that was the last time Tom Brady has lost a game in Buffalo. Next up is the Carolina Panthers, who've had a lot of great memories through the years. A lot of notable ones, since Cam Newton has been a member of the Carolina Panthers, and this is the one that stood out to me.
If that happened, everyone was in trouble. Newton running. Newton gets in the corner. Cam down the sideline. Cam Newton. Hesitation. Still on his feet. Cam Newton. Touchdown, Carolina. What a play.
That was Cam Newton's 72-yard rushing touchdown and he flipped into the end zone. This was against the Atlanta Falcons. This was actually the year before the Panthers really broke through with Cam Newton. This was his second year in the league, and on the call there was Gus Johnson on Fox. Next up is the Chicago Bears, who have had a lot of memories up and downs through the years, mostly down the last couple years. This one was from a while ago, but this is obviously the one that stuck out to me the most.
We led the NFC in both kickoff returns and punt returns. And the Colts have had a hard time all season covering kicks. It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
That was obviously their defining moment in the Super Bowl against the Colts as Devin Hester returned the opening kickoff 92 yards for a touchdown. That was Jim Nantz on the call in Super Bowl 41. Next up's the Cincinnati Bengals. I have to be honest, I've had a hard time finding this memory for the Bengals, but one really stuck out to me.
And to have that kind of foot quickness and that good vision. And the other thing he is durable. He has averaged more carries per game than any back in the NFL over the last 3.5 years. Wide open and a flick into the end zone by Jerome Simpson. Oh, goodness.
That was Jerome Simpson, former Bengals wide receiver, did a front flip into the end zone. This was on Christmas Eve against the Cardinals in a game where the Bengals absolutely had to have the win because they were fighting at the time for a wild card spot in the AFC playoffs. He ultimately got in but lost to the Houston Texans in the wild card game. On the call there was Tom Brenneman, Cincinnati native, the voice of the Reds. So only fitting that he had that best moment. That was in 2011. And another one that I had trouble picking was the Cleveland Browns, because they've had a lot of bad rather than good over the last few years. And this is the one that I came across. That was Carlos Hyde's go-ahead touchdown against the Jets. That was this year. That was the Browns' first win in 635 days. Carlos Hyde with the game-winning touchdown. Now Hyde is a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars after the Browns traded him away. Next up is the Dallas Cowboys. They've had some interesting moments the last few years. And there's a certain one that stood out to me in a big spot on the road that I think that has to be recognized.
It's Elliott for the touchdown. No flags. Cowboys lead. 9 seconds left.
That was Ezekiel Elliott's go-ahead touchdown against the Steelers in Pittsburgh in 2016. And on the call there was Joe Buck. By the way, that last one, the Browns touchdown, was Joe Buck too. Next up is the Denver Broncos. They've had some interesting memories, good and bad, the last couple years. But there's obviously one interesting one to me that really stood out, even though they were in the Super Bowl a few years back. But this is one of the biggest upsets in the playoffs over the last 10 years or so.
And here we go. First snap of the overtime. The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all. Got him at the 30. It's Thomas at the 50. Skipper got him free to the 30. To the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England. They won it on the first play of overtime.
That was Tim Tebow's 80-yard overtime touchdown pass to Demaryius Thomas to upset the Steelers as they went on to play the Patriots and got blown out, predictably, in New England. But that is a great memory and certainly was one of the more fun upsets over the last 10 years in the NFL playoffs. And on the call there was Jim Nantz. Next up is the Detroit Lions. This was a hard one to pick because they really haven't had any good moments. But here's my pick.
Stafford completes the ball into the end zone. Touchdown! Antoine Bolden!
That was Matthew Stafford throwing an 18-yard game-winning touchdown pass to Anquan Bolden in 2016. The Lions ended up making the playoffs that year, so that turned out to be one of the biggest wins of their season over the Redskins, who are also in contention for a playoff spot that season. On the call there was Justin Kutcher from Fox. Next up, the Green Bay Packers. So many great choices, but there's one obvious one that stood out for me.
Can the receivers get far enough down the field? Rodgers in trouble. It's going to get there. He turned 32 yesterday. Does he have a vintage moment in it? In the end zone, it is caught for the win. Richard Rodgers with a walk-off touchdown. A game ender for the Packers.
That was Aaron Rodgers' Hail Mary to Richard Rodgers, 61 yards. That was in 2015 against the Lions. Jim Nantz on the call on Thursday Night Football on CBS. That was just a phenomenal football game. A roughing the passer call in the final seconds led to this Hail Mary. And ultimately Green Bay made the playoffs as a wild card. Went on to beat Washington in the first round. Division round, they faced the Cardinals. Rodgers throws another Hail Mary to force overtime. Don't forget about that. That was my honorable mention for them. And they ended up losing that game. That's why I didn't pick that. I picked this one because that was their biggest win of the season and perhaps saved their season and ended up making the postseason that year. And maybe if that Hail Mary doesn't happen, Mike McCarthy might be out of a job. And Mike McCarthy might be out of a job this year. You never know. Houston Texans. It's hard to imagine that they haven't been around 20 years yet. Their 20-year anniversary, I believe, is 5 years away. So they've only been around for about 15 years. So there really wasn't an obvious memory to choose from. They've had some playoff runs and stuff, but no real playoff memory stood out. There's a couple ones that went against them that may appear on the memories portion of the podcast, but this is the one that stood out to me the most for the Texans.
Chandler in motion. This is 3rd and 2. Texans coming in the blitz. Manuel intercepted by Wood. And the big fella lumbering inside the 40. No one is going to catch Wood into the end zone for the pick six.
That was J.J. Watt's 80-yard pick six off of E.J. Manuel against the Bills in 2014. And on the call there was Spiriditas of CBS. Next up is the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of fond memories over the last couple years. They made a couple Super Bowl runs with Peyton Manning, but none of them were the memories that I chose. There's one in particular that I chose that was a monster comeback led by current Colts quarterback Andrew Luck.
Series. So Abdullah is in the game along with Quentin Demps. So a safety is now playing the nickel position.
And here's Luck and the Colts from their own 36 with a fresh set of downs. Steps up.
Long look, and he's got Hilton for the touchdown.
That was the game-winning touchdown and what was an incredible comeback for the Colts in the 2013 playoffs against the Chiefs. That Chiefs team got off to that great start, faltered at the end of the year. That game was literally the 2013 Chiefs season in a nutshell. Chiefs got off to the big lead and totally collapsed at the end. 66-yard pass from Luck to Hilton against the Chiefs. Dan Hicks on the call on NBC. That was just a great game to watch. Next up's the Jacksonville Jaguars. This one was very, very obvious to me. And I mean so obvious.
Or just depend on the deep guys to knock it away. Gerard steps up. Fires. Mike Sims Walker. Knocked down. Oh, he caught it! Oh! Unbelievable! Mike Thomas! Touchdown Jags! Ball game! 50 yards!
That was David Garrard's Hail Mary to Mike Thomas against the Texans in 2010. This was so obvious of a pick. Gus Johnson on the call on CBS. Next up is the Kansas City Chiefs. I know I just had a memory go against them when I did the Colts, but this is a memory that really got them kick-started in a big game.
The 11 best games of the year to crown one champion. Off we go with the playoffs. And Niall Davis will bring it out from 6 deep. Davis across the 50. Davis is gone! Niall Davis starts the playoffs with a bang! 106 yards! Touchdown, Chiefs! Whoa! Well blocked, Mike.
That was Niall Davis' 106-yard kickoff return for touchdown against the Texans in the wild card round 2015 playoffs. That was Mike Tirico on the call on ESPN. I believe that was the last game he ever did for ESPN before his move to NBC. And you heard John Gruden at the end there as well. And that turned out to be a blowout playoff victory for the Kansas City Chiefs. Next up is the Los Angeles Chargers. This memory came when they were the San Diego Chargers. In what was a big game for them at the time.
28 seconds. Rivers leaves it to the end zone. Open Jackson!
Touchdown, San Diego. How about Vincent Jackson? Got some space, takes up the field. Nice move. The ball's in the air. There's nothing Corey Webster can do.
That was Phillip Rivers' game-winning touchdown pass to Vincent Jackson, 2009, against the Giants in New York. That was a big game for Rivers and the Chargers, as I'm sure Rivers would be motivated to play against the team that originally drafted him in the Giants, and in that trade that sent him to San Diego for Eli Manning. And the history of those two franchises certainly would have changed. And that debate's going to go on for years and years and years. And who would you rather be, the Giants or the Chargers? Chargers, the quarterback's still in his prime and hasn't won anything and has failed in big games a lot of times in the postseason. Or the aging quarterback that might be in his final season that has 2 Super Bowl rings and 2 great playoff runs that he had. I think I'd rather have the Giants results because they ended up in 2 rings rather than disappointment after disappointment with the Chargers. And that was Jim Nantz and Phil Simms on the call on CBS for that game. Next up is the Los Angeles Rams. And this was a crazy touchdown.
Short pass to Woods, and Robert Woods takes it inside the 30 to 20 on 3rd down and 33. The Rams capitalize a 52-yard catch and run. Woods with the Los Angeles Times.
That was Robert Woods' 52-yard touchdown catch and run on 3rd and 33 against the Giants at MetLife Stadium last year. The Giants just flat out quit on that play, and that was Kenny Albert on the call on Fox. Next up is the Miami Dolphins. this was hard to choose because they really haven't had any relevant moments that much over the last 20 years or so. But I have a fun one in store for them.
Comes up, takes it 1 yard deep and brings it out. Finds a lane. Shaquille Grant. He may go all the way. Grant is in. Touchdown, Miami.
That was Jakeem Grant's 102-yard touchdown run against the Tennessee Titans. It was a kickoff return for touchdown in what was the opening game of this year. It was just a fun game and a lot of returns for touchdowns in that game. That was Sam Rosen on the call on Fox. Next up is the Minnesota Vikings. I said the Jags one was obvious. This was the most obvious choice of all of these memories in any of the four major sports.
Keenum's going to try to work the ball on the boundary. Keenum steps into it. Pass is caught. Diggs, sideline, touchdown. Unbelievable. Vikings win it.
No doubt about it. Stephon Diggs, Minneapolis Miracle. The 66-yard touchdown pass from Keenum to Diggs. That was one of the craziest fourth quarters ever. Capped off by this. This was the obvious of any of the four major sports picks. The Minnesota Vikings, Minneapolis Miracle, which ultimately led into a dud of a game for them in the NFC title game against the Eagles. But this is a huge memory for that franchise and one that nobody's ever going to forget. And that was Joe Buck on the call on Fox. And that was obviously against the Saints. New England Patriots have a ton of fun memories through the years. But this is one of the more impressive game-winning drives that I've ever seen from Tom Brady in his illustrious Hall of Fame career. And his team was littered by injuries. And he led a game-winning drive against what was a very good New Orleans Saints team.
And he's in the gun. Collie and Tompkins left. Brady throws it to the end zone for Kenbrell Tompkins leaping. Touchdown! Patriots! Kenbrell Tompkins! Brady's back! That's your quarterback! Who lost the building? Unicorns! Show ponies! Where's the beef?
That was Tom Brady's game-winning touchdown to Kenbrell Tompkins, who was like their sixth-string receiver. And as I said, the Pats were littered with injuries. Rob Gronkowski was hurt. Julian Edelman, I believe, was hurt too. And they're down to literally their fourth, fifth, and sixth-string receivers. And Kenbrell Tompkins catches a game-winning touchdown pass from Brady. And the reason why I chose the radio call, called by Bob Sochi and Scott Zolak, just because it was so funny with the Unicorns, Show Ponies, where's the beef call at the end. I just love that call. And on TV for Fox, it was Tom Brenneman along with Troy Aikman, because Joe Buck had the call baseball for Fox. Next up's the New Orleans Saints. They've had some fond memories. Drew Brees has had a lot of big moments in his career. But this memory really doesn't belong Drew Brees. It involves Sean Payton in what turned out to be a critical decision for his team in the biggest game in the history of their franchise.
Well, Jim, a lot of teams, when they play the Colts, they like to defer just so they don't have to face this situation where Peyton Manning gets the football in the second half after he's gone in and looked at all those pictures you see him looking at every time he comes off the field. Onside kick to start the second half, and the ball bounces off the hands of the Colts, and it looks like the Saints had it for a second. It came out of the hands of the safe player, too. I don't know if he got it back. Boy, you're talking about not afraid. Sean Payton, he said big games, you got to make tough decisions.
Both teams still certain they have it. Well, off that Saints sideline.
Look at this. This is an all-time scrum for the football.
How about this way to start the second half? And Saints football. They recover the onside kick. What a fearless start to the second half.
That was the Saints going for the surprise onside kick to start the second half in the Super Bowl against the Colts. And they recovered the onside kick, what turned out to be the biggest coaching decision in Sean Payton's illustrious coaching career. That turned out to be successful, and that led ultimately to the Saints' Super Bowl win, their only Super Bowl win in franchise history. And now it's Jim Nantz on the call on CBS along with Phil Simms. The New York Football Giants have had illustrious moments throughout their franchise. It hasn't been pretty the last 5 years or so, but there's an obvious choice for their best memory.
Came close to a game-ending interception.
Well, that's about as demonstrative as you're going to see Eli Manning.
Pressure from Thomas off the edge. Eli Manning stays on his feet. Airs it out down the field. It is caught by Tyree.
That was obviously Eli Manning to David Tyree, what we all know as the helmet catch. This was an obvious choice that ultimately led to what I think was the biggest upset in the history of sports, with the Giants upsetting the heavily favored and undefeated New England Patriots. That was obviously Joe Buck on the call with Troy Aikman on Fox. Now Super Bowl 42. Next up's the New York Jets. Hasn't been pretty for them. And it really wasn't easy to find a good memory for them, but I ultimately found one. Here it is.
Need a touchdown. Sanchez, corner of the end zone.
That was Mark Sanchez throwing a go-ahead touchdown to Santonio Holmes. In 2010 against the Texans, the Jets improved to 8-2 at the time. They were coached by Rex Ryan, obviously, when they were a pretty solid team in the AFC. They went to back-to-back AFC title games, lost to Peyton Manning and the Colts in 2010, and to Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers in 2011. That was Greg Gumbel on the call on CBS. Next up's the Oakland Raiders. Like the Jets, hasn't really been pretty for them over the last years or so. But this is more of an emotional, happy moment for the Raiders rather than a real happy moment.
7 seconds to play. Shaw takes the snap. 5 seconds left. Shaw. Shaw throws. Intercepted. It's over. Michael Huff.
That was Matt Shaw throwing an interception in the end zone to Michael Huff. That was the Raiders' first game after losing their owner to his death. That was Ian Eagle on the call on CBS. And that was obviously against the Texans in 2011. Next up's the Philadelphia Eagles. This one's pretty obvious because it just happened recently.
2. Brady gets hit. The ball is out. And Philadelphia has it. Derek Barnett comes away with it.
That was Derek Barnett strip sack and fumble in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady and the Patriots. That was the biggest play of that game and perhaps cost the Patriots back-to-back titles, which led to the Eagles to their first Super Bowl win in franchise history. That was Al Michaels on the call on NBC along with Chris Collinsworth. Next up's the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot of fond memories for them over the last 20 years or so. But to me, there's one that stood out to me because it came in a monstrous spot for Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers.
More slot left. Washington outside left. Roethlisberger has time. Throws to the back of the end zone, and it is off for a touchdown by Holmes.
That was Ben Roethlisberger to Santonio Holmes for the game-winning touchdown in Super Bowl 43. That was Ben Roethlisberger's second ring. Al Michaels was on the call on NBC. Next up is the San Francisco 49ers. This was, at the time, a big game for the 49ers. And they were a home underdog in the postseason. And this is what happened. That was Alex Smith to Vernon Davis, the go-ahead touchdown that gave the 49ers the upset win at home over the New Orleans Saints in the 2011 playoffs that advanced the Niners to the NFC title game against the Giants, in which they ultimately lost at home on a game-winning field goal by Lawrence Tynes to send the Giants back to the Super Bowl against the Pats. And on Fox, that was Kenny Albert on the call. A lot of memories against the Saints on this podcast. We had the Vernon Davis touchdown and then the Minneapolis Miracle. And obviously the Saints memory I chose was a great one. Next up's the Seattle Seahawks. Since Russell Wilson's been there pretty much, it's been mostly good times for them. But this is probably their favorite memory. That was Malcolm Smith's pick 6 in the Super Bowl, which handed him the Super Bowl MVP honors of this game. That was Joe Buck on the call on Fox. That was against the Broncos, obviously, in the Super Bowl at MetLife Stadium. Next up's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was a hard one to peg, too. But I found a fun one for this team that happened recently.
The outside of the field.
Great protection again. And the sideline, it is a touchdown for Tampa Bay to Chris Godwin. And they're going to go for 2. I've got it.
That was Tom Brenneman on the call on Fox. Jameis Winston touchdown pass to Chris Godwin with 9 seconds left to upset the Saints in Week 17. That essentially bumped the Saints out of contention for a first-round bye. That was last year. This one's obvious, the Tennessee Titans.
Do the Titans have a miracle left in them in what has been a magical season to this point? If they do, they need it now. Christie kicks it high and short. Going to be fielded by Lorenzo Neal at the 25. Pitches it back to Wycheck. He throws it across the field to Dyson.
He's got something.
30,
He's got
40,
something.
50.
He's got it.
40.
He's got it.
20. 10.
He's got it.
End zone. Touchdown Titans. There are no flags on the field. It's a miracle. Tennessee has pulled a miracle.
That was obviously the Music City Miracle against the Bills in the 1999 playoffs. Mike Keith on the Titans radio network. I just like the radio call better than the TV call. On TV was Mike Patrick on ABC. Last but not least in the NFL, for memories, it is the Washington Redskins. And this happened a few years ago, but it was one of the more fun comebacks that we've had.
Redskins now face 3rd and goal from the Tampa Bay 6. 4 receivers. Split to the left. The tight end Reed to the right. Cousins on 3rd down. Looking for Reed. He's got it. Touchdown.
That was Kirk Cousins' go-ahead touchdown to Jordan Reed, which ultimately gave the Redskins the lead after they kicked the extra point. 2015 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which ultimately led to this.
You like that? You like that?
All right, now I'm going to say why each NFL franchise should be thankful. The Arizona Cardinals have what possibly is a franchise quarterback in Josh Rosen. He's shown some flashes in his rookie year, but every rookie goes through their struggles as well. We'll see if Rosen is the real deal or not. The Atlanta Falcons should be thankful because they still have an above-average quarterback playing in his prime. The Falcons have had a disappointing season this year, but they should still be among the league's relevant teams as long as Matt Ryan is on the roster. Maybe coaching changes are ahead for this team. We shall see. The Baltimore Ravens should be thankful because they have who is possibly a new franchise quarterback waiting in the wings in Lamar Jackson. Joe Flacco, in reality, had one great playoff run, but the rest of it's mediocrity. If he didn't have that great playoff run, he'd be compared to guys like Andy Dalton. The Buffalo Bills. They should be thankful because, like the Cardinals, have a possibly young franchise quarterback in Josh Allen. He's had some moments good and bad, but we shall see if he turns out to be good or not. Another thing going right for the Bills is that they have a nice young coach in Sean McDermott. He helped that team get to the playoffs a year ago. They obviously took a step back. He's, I believe, there for the long run, and I think should be able to help Allen develop pretty well. And he also has a good defense. The Carolina Panthers should be thankful because they have a franchise quarterback in Cam Newton. He has rejuvenized this Panthers franchise. It took him the year 3 to get to the playoffs. Years 1 and 2, the Panthers were not good teams, but he showed promise in those 2 years. But he really has brought the Panthers back to relevancy, and they have been a contender in the NFC for the last 5 years. And Cam Newton has an MVP and led them to a Super Bowl, but not a win. The Chicago Bears should be thankful because they look to have a new young franchise quarterback in Mitch Trubisky. They also look to have a nice young promising coach in Matt Nagy, who's helped Trubisky develop this year. And they also should be thankful because the Oakland Raiders gave them Khalil Mack. Yes, Mack cost them a hefty price, but it'll be worth it in the end if the Bears remain relevant while Mack is in his prime. The Cincinnati Bengals should be thankful because they have a lot of talent throughout their roster. Yeah, this year really hasn't gone as planned for the Bengals, as injuries have littered this team to A.J. Green, and their defense has regressed, which led to the firing of Terrell Austin. Andy Dalton is not as bad as people say he is. He really is a decent quarterback, but just hasn't fared well in big games against the Steelers and in the postseason. The Cleveland Browns should be thankful because they have a nice young franchise quarterback in Baker Mayfield. Yes, he has had some struggles of late, but he's looked like the best one of the 5 young rookie quarterbacks so far. He might not end up being the best one, but he's looked like the best one so far. The Dallas Cowboys should be thankful because their defense has some nice young building blocks on it. It's remained to be seen whether Dak Prescott is really a franchise quarterback. He had a great rookie year, but has regressed since. Ezekiel Elliott's a phenomenal running back, top 5-1 in the league. But potentially new coaching staff coming in next year, maybe Prescott will improve. And that defense certainly cannot be slept on. The Denver Broncos, this is tough. They're a franchise that's a bit in limbo. They won a Super Bowl a few years ago. But let's say for them that they should be thankful for the great pass rush they have, led by Von Miller and rookie Bradley Chubb. They may have a new coach coming in next year, and maybe they draft the franchise quarterback because Case Keenum really hasn't worked out for them. Although he's had some good moments, but let's be honest, it's Case Keenum, and he isn't that good. The Detroit Lions should be thankful that they have stability at the quarterback position with Matt Stafford, and they have a nice young running back who's actually hurt right now in Kerryon Johnson, who's a building block for them going forward. The Green Bay Packers should be thankful because Aaron Rodgers is healthy and is getting better and better by the week. Yeah, the Green Bay Packers may not be a contender this year, but the fact that Aaron Rodgers is healthy and playing at a high level should please Packer Nation. The Houston Texans should be thankful because they have a potentially good young franchise quarterback in Deshaun Watson. Yes, he's struggled this year, but that's more of him coming back from the injury. I think next year is the year he puts it all together. Maybe they have a new coaching staff if they don't advance far in the postseason. That could open things up for Watson in that offense a little bit. And they also should be thankful for the great defense they have, led by J.J. Watt, Whitney Merciless, and Jadeveon Clowney. The Indianapolis Colts should be thankful for Andrew Luck, who's come back and has played as well as he ever has in his career, getting better and better by the week. That offensive line is, I think, the most improved unit in the NFL, led by rookie guard Quentin Nelson. The Jacksonville Jaguars should be thankful because they have a nice young coach in Doug Marrone, and they have a good football of operations guy in Tom Coughlin. Blake Bortles is not the quarterback they thought he was. Maybe they move on from him this offseason. But I believe in Tom Coughlin. I think he knows what he's doing. This team was in the the AFC title game a year ago. Just a lot has gone wrong for them this season. The Kansas City Chiefs be thankful for Patrick Mahomes. He's a franchise quarterback, the best young quarterback in football. He was the best quarterback in that draft class, as we're learning. At this time last year, people were saying it was Deshaun Watson. Not so fast. It's easily Patrick Mahomes. And if Mitch Trubisky doesn't turn out to be special like Mahomes, Bears fans are going to be kicking themselves saying, why did we pass up on Patrick Mahomes? The Los Angeles Chargers should be thankful that Phillip Rivers is still playing at a high level and that their defense is one of the best ones that they've had in years, led by Joey Bosa, Derwin James, and Melvin Ingram. The Los Angeles Rams should be thankful for their great young head coach in Sean McVay, who has galvanized Jared Goff, who was perceived as a bust his rookie year. The Miami Dolphins should be thankful because they have a nice young running back in Kenyon Drake, who is a bit of a building block for them. Although they'll probably change quarterbacks going into next year, and head coaches too. The Minnesota Vikings should be thankful for the great defense they have, led by Everson Griffin, Linval Joseph, Danielle Hunter, Harrison Smith, Xavier Rhodes, among others. The New England Patriots should be just thankful for two things: Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Enough said. They're the GOATs of this sport. The New Orleans Saints should be thankful for their own head coach and quarterback too, and Sean Payton and Drew Brees. And there's a few years there where they were in a contender. They're finally back to that contender status after a few years in the NFC South basement. They're back, and Drew Brees is still at his prime. The New York Football Giants should be thankful for Saquon Barkley, who already is the best running back in the NFL and is a lock to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year, barring an injury. The New York Jets should be thankful for Sam Darnold. He's been up and down his rookie year, but I think he'll turn out to be the best quarterback taken from this year's draft. The Oakland Raiders should be thankful for what? The fact that they're moving to Vegas? I mean, John Gruden really has not done a good job this year, in my opinion. Derek Carr's regressed, but it's not that Derek Carr is bad. It's just that maybe he's having a bad year. The Philadelphia Eagles should be thankful for Carson Wentz, who's a young franchise quarterback who is having a down year because he's coming off an injury. I was just talking about this with Watson. The Pittsburgh Steelers should be thankful for Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown, who've been the key cogs to the Steelers team over the last few seasons. The San Francisco 49ers should be thankful for Kyle Shanahan, who's going to be a good head coach in this league, and Jimmy Garoppolo, who's currently recovering from an ACL injury. Next season might be similar to what Carson Wentz and Deshaun Watson are dealing with for him, but in the 2020 season, I expect him to be very good. The Seattle Seahawks should be thankful for Russell Wilson, who's kept this team afloat this year after many people pegged them to finish sub 500 and possibly in last place in the NFC West. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is a difficult one. Mike Evans is one of the best receivers in football, and they should be thankful that they have him, and they have him locked up long term. The Tennessee Titans, another tough one for me. Let's say that their defense is very good, led by Jarrell Casey, among others. Yeah, their defense had a rough game against the Colts, but it was phenomenal against Dallas, and it was phenomenal against New England. And last but not least, the Washington Redskins. This is a hard one for them, too. What should they be thankful for? Let's say they should be thankful for their young, up-and-coming defense, like the Titans, led by some former Alabama studs, such as Jonathan Allen and De'Aaron Payne, as the Redskins defense, in my opinion, is one of the more underrated units in football, although it gave up a lot of yards to Tampa Bay a few weeks ago. Next up is baseball. For their memories. I'm going to try to be quick here. First up is the Arizona Diamondbacks. This was easy.
The chance of a lifetime for Luis Gonzalez. 2-2, bottom of the ninth. Game 7 of the World Series. Bases loaded. Fly, center field. The Diamondbacks are world champions.
That was Luis Gonzalez's walk-off single against the Yankees in the 2001 World Series, called by Joe Buck. Next up is the Atlanta Braves.
High fly ball, pretty well hit. Back goes Nix at the wall. It's off. It's a grand slam, and the Braves win it.
That was a walk-off grand slam by Brooks Conrad against the Cincinnati Reds. And that was a big 7-run comeback by the Braves to pull out what was a phenomenal game between these two contenders at the time in the National League. And that was called by Chip Carey from Fox Sports Atlanta. Next up is the Baltimore Orioles.
There's 48,000 people waiting for him to break out. And he just crushed this to left field, and he just broke out.
That was Adam Jones's 2-run home run to tie up the ALCS Game 2 at 3 apiece. In what was a great game between these two teams. The Royals ended up sweeping the Orioles in the ALCS that year. That was 2014. That home run was called by Ernie Johnson. Next up's the Boston Red Sox. This was easy.
Bases loaded. 2 out. Hard hit into right. Back at the wall. Tie game. Big Puppy. The grand slam.
That was David Ortiz's game-tying grand slam with 2 outs in the bottom of the 8th inning against the Tigers in the 2013 ALCS in Game 2, called by Joe Buck on Fox. That was just a great game. That ended on a walk-off hit by Jacoby Ellsbury. Next up is the Chicago Cubs. This was easy, too.
Here's the 0-1. This is going to be a tough play. The Cubs win the World Series. Bryant makes the play. It's over. And the Cubs have finally won it all.
That was the Cubs' final out of the 2016 World Series, which broke their longest drought. In my opinion, this was perhaps the biggest moment in the history of sports. The Chicago Cubs, who were a laughingstock among big market sports teams, a doormat, a lot of bad memories, from the Bartman catch to some playoff chokes, which led to a great play by Chris Bryant in 2016, which set the Cubs their World Series 8-7 in 10 innings, the rain delay, the whole deal. This was probably the easiest one to pick, although there were some good ones for the Cubs. This is the easiest baseball one to pick, I should say. Although the Cubs had some good ones, such as the go-ahead hit by Ben Zobrist in the 10th inning of Game 7. And then even this year, the walk-off grand slam by David Bodie on Sunday Night Baseball with the Santa Maria call by Matt Vasgersian. But that was obviously Joe Buck on Fox. Next up is the Chicago White Sox.
Alexei! Yes! 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 Yes!
That was Mark Burley's perfect game, the final out against the Tampa Bay Rays in 2009. On the call there was Hawk Harrelson. Next up is the Cincinnati Reds.
High drive into deep left center field, and it is gone. A grand slam by Frazier.
That was Todd Frazier's walk-off grand slam against the Detroit Tigers in the bottom of the 13th inning in 2015. The call was Tom Brenneman on Fox Sports Cincinnati. Next up, the Cleveland Indians. This was easy, too. That was Rajai Davis's 2-run game-tying home run in Game 7 against the Cubs off of Aroldis Chapman with 2 outs in the bottom of the 8th inning, which ultimately led to that rain delay and the Cubs eventually winning that game. But that moment will go down as a great one in the history of the Cleveland Indians. That was the biggest home run in Indians history, no doubt about it. even though they ended up losing that game. Joe Buck on the call on Fox. Next up, the Colorado Rockies. This was a hard one to find.
Swing, fly ball. Center field deep. Young to the wall.
That was Matt Holliday's 3-run home run in Game 4, in which the Rockies swept the Diamondbacks in 2007. On the call was Chip Carey on TBS. Next up, the Detroit Tigers.
2 pitch on the way. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. Verlander has done it again.
That was Justin Verlander's no-hitter against the Blue Jays in 2011. On the call there was Mario Impemba, who was recently fired. And that was Justin Verlander's MVP season, by the way. So that's why I chose that particular final out of Verlander's, of one of his no-hitters. Next up is the Houston Astros. So many memories for them over the last couple years. And this is the one I had chosen.
For home. 2 on, 2 out. 10th inning. That's in the air to left. Here comes Fisher. Throw by Ethier. Astros win it in 10.
That was Alex Bregman's walk-off single against the Dodgers in Game 5 of the 2017 World Series. Astros went on to win that series in 7. That was the biggest hit of Alex Bregman's career to this date. On the call there was obviously Joe Buck. Next up's the Kansas City Royals.
His first in the postseason. And the score is Dyson. And Kansas City is on top 3-2.
That was Christian Colon's go-ahead hit in the top of the 12th inning in Game 5, in which the Royals clinched the World Series in 2015 against the Mets. On the call there was Joe Buck. Next up is the Los Angeles Angels.
Bases are loaded with 1 out. Infield in. Kendry Morales at the plate. He shoots it into deep center field. Gutierrez looks up. It's out of here. A game-winning grand slam home run for Kendry Morales. Angels win the game in 10 innings, 5-1.
That was Kenny Albert on the call on Fox. That was Kendrys Morales' walk-off grand slam against the Mariners, 2010. Next up is the Los Angeles Dodgers. This one's a little bit obvious because it just happened.
Muncy flies one in the air to left center. Back at the wall. It is gone! It's over! Muncy, a walk-off home run to win Game 3.
That was one of the biggest home runs for the Dodgers over the last 20 years or so. Probably the biggest home run since Kirk Gibson's home run in 1988 for them. They ultimately lost the series to the Red Sox. That was this year, obviously. Max Muncy, walk-off home run. Game 3 off of Nathan Eovaldi in the performance that pretty much is going to get him paid this winter by somebody. Maybe the Red Sox. We'll see. But that was obviously Joe Buck on the call on Fox. Next up's the Miami Marlins. This is actually a pretty sad one now we think about it.
Fernandez, left field. It's deep. It is gone. The kid in his last game. Homers to left. We told you to come out. We told you to watch this one tonight.
Jose Fernandez, first career home run in front of his home fans against the Atlanta Braves, which led to a benches clearing incident. Rest in peace, Jose Fernandez. Jesus. If he was still alive, I think he'd be the best player or the best pitcher in baseball, no doubt about it. That guy had so much potential, and it's really sad that he's no longer with us. Rest in peace. Milwaukee Brewers are next. This was a bit of an easy one, too.
So they're not trying to just go in and out, up and down on Nigel Morgan here. They're trying to get him out at the risk of him getting a hit. 2-2. Morgan, base hit up the middle. Brewers are going to be away for round. The throw to the plate. Not in time, and the Brewers advance to the National League Championship Series.
Niger Morgan's walk-off single up the middle scores Carlos Gomez. Brewers would then advance to the NLCS in 2011. On the call there was Victor Rojas, who's the play-by-play voice for the Los Angeles Angels, as the Brewers ultimately lost to the Cardinals in the NLCS. Next up's the Minnesota Twins. This actually just happened recently.
Final game of the year, and with a one-run lead, the Twins are going to change pitchers and catchers. How about this?
Has Joe Mauer made up his mind already? What does this mean?
The only catcher to win an American League batting title, and he did it 3 times.
Joe in tears.
That was Joe Mauer in his final game. Catches for the first time since 2013. Emotional moment for the Twins fans there. Next up is the New York Mets. This is actually one of the more fun ones in the most recent years, especially for that fan base.
His first hit of the year. He drives one. Deep left field. That goes Upton. Back near the wall. It's out of here. Bartolo has done it. The impossible has happened. The team vacates the dugout as Bartolo takes the long trot. His first career home run. And there will be nobody in the dugout to greet him. This is one of the great moments in the history of baseball.
Gary Cohen on the call on SNY along with Keith Hernandez and Ron Darling. Bartolo Colon, first career home run. Hits it for the Mets 2016 against the Padres. The New York Yankees have had a ton of great memories over the last 20 years or so. There's one that obviously stood out to me.
And that brings up Jeter. Number 2, Derek Jeter. Number 2. Well, the script is there. The last page is in Derek's hands. Meek deals. Base hit to right field. Hit comes Richardson. Here's the throw from Markakis. Richardson is safe. Derek Jeter ends his final game with a walk-off single. Derek Jeter, where fantasy becomes reality. Did you have any doubt?
Michael K. on the call on the S Network. That was obviously Derek Jeter's final home game. Hits the walk-off single against the Baltimore Orioles in 2014. Oakland Athletics. This is a bit of an emotional one.
Pennington, he's got it. Throw to first. He did it. He did it. Dallas Braden has thrown a perfect game.
That was Dallas Braden's perfect game on Mother's Day against the Tampa Bay Rays 2010 after he loses his mother. That was Glenn Kuiper on the call on Comcast Sportsnet Bay Area. Next up's another emotional one. The Philadelphia Phillies. Well, now it's emotional.
Holiday is one strike away. The 0-2. A bouncer. Ruiz. In time! Roy Halladay has thrown a no-hitter.
Brian Anderson on the call on TBS. Roy Halladay, no-hitter against the Reds in the 2010 National League Division Series. Rest in peace, Roy Doc Halladay. Next up's the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Well, they're standing room only crowd trying to get under Johnny Cueto's skin, and they might be. That ball's hit well to left center field. Back toward the track, and that ball is gone. Russell Martin, 2-0 Pittsburgh.
Ernie Johnson on the call on TBS. That was Russell Martin's home run against the Reds, 2013 National League wildcard game. Fans distract Johnny Cueto. He literally drops the ball on the mound, and in the next pitch, Martin sends it to the bleachers in left, as the Pirates went on to play the Cardinals in the National League Division Series. Next up is the St. Louis Cardinals, speaking of which, this was an easy choice.
Breeze hits it in the air to center. We will see you tomorrow night.
Joe Buck on the call on Fox. Emotional for him because he honored his late father, Jack Buck. Only fitting that was the Cardinals that ended up with the win in the walk-off by David Freese that sent it to Game 7, in which they ultimately won the World Series. Next up is the San Diego Padres. This was a hard one to pick, but I ultimately found a good one. Matt Vasgersian on the call for the Padres. Walk-off grand slam by Rondell White against the Seattle Mariners in 2003. Next up is the Seattle Mariners.
Seattle Mariners, Felix Hernandez, the 2-2.
He got it! 34 years, 119 games. It's finally happened. A perfect game by a Seattle Mariner. It was done by the king, Felix Hernandez.
Felix Hernandez, perfect game against the Tampa Bay Rays. That was the final out. On the call there was Dave Sims. That was in 2012. Next up, the San Francisco Giants.
Salvador Perez, the 2-2. Popped up. Send the ball. In foul territory. Giants win.
That was the San Francisco Giants' final out in what was a mini dynasty for them. Their third World Series in 5 years, 2014. That was Joe Buck on the call. They got Salvador Perez to pop up to Pablo Sandoval for the final out with the man on third base, which was the tying run. That was a thrilling ending to that World Series. And if I didn't mention it before, Joe Buck on the call on Fox. Next up's the Tampa Bay Rays. This was a bit of an easy one.
It's an 8-7 final on Longoria's second home run of the night. And moments after, Baltimore comes back to beat the Red Sox. The Rays win it on the home run by Longoria. And there's some celebrating going on here.
That was Dwayne Stats on the call. Evan Longoria's walk-off home run against the Yankees in 2011 that sent them to the postseason and eliminated the Red Sox as they had their epic collapse. Next up's the Texas Rangers. That was Nelson Cruz's walk-off grand slam in the bottom of the 11th inning, Game 2 ALCS 2011 against the Tigers. Joe Buck on the call on Fox. Next up is the Toronto Blue Jays. That was Jose Batista's go-ahead home run in the ALDS Game 5 against the Texas Rangers 2015. Kenny Albert on the call on Fox Sports 1. Next up, the Washington Nationals. And I should say last but not least, too.
A good exhibition here. Yep. 13th pitch will be next. 3-2. And a drive hit deep to left field. Looking up, way back. It's gone.
Jason Wirtz's walk-off homer against the St. Louis Cardinals in Game 4 of the NLDS to force a Game 5 in which ultimately the Nationals booed the big league. Cardinals came back to go to the NLCS in which they ultimately lost to the Giants in 2012. Jason Wirtz walk-off home run, Dick Stockton on the call on TBS. Quickly, I'm going to go through why each MLB franchise to be thankful. Arizona Diamondbacks, yes, they may be headed for a bit of a rebuild, but they should be thankful that they have one of the best players in the game currently on their roster in Paul Goldschmidt. If they keep him, then that'll probably be his last year with the Diamondbacks, barring some contract extension I don't see coming. The Atlanta Braves should be thankful that they're back to being a contender thanks to the arrival of Ronald Acuna Jr. They have the best, or if not the best, but one of the best first basemen in the game in Freddie Freeman, who I think is also a top 30 player in the game. Up-and-coming pitching staff in the great farm system and a great manager, who is the reigning National League Manager of the Year in Brian Snitker. The Baltimore Orioles, this is hard. They should be thankful that they're finally heading in a direction after being stuck in limbo for a few years. They're finally headed for a rebuild. Yes, it'll be a while. It'll be worth the wait if you hit on your draft picks and whatnot. The Boston Red Sox should be thankful because they just won the World Series. They have a great young core led by Mookie Betts, Andrew Benintendi, Xander Bogaerts. Among them, JD Martinez was a great addition to this team. They have a great pitching staff led by Chris Sale and a great manager in Alex Cora. The Chicago Cubs should be thankful because they still have a young core led by Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo. The White Sox should be thankful that they should be on the come within the next couple years, led by the great young talent they have in the minors that are coming, and some of it is on the major league roster. The Cincinnati Reds, like the White Sox, should be thankful that they have a young farm system with a lot of up-and-coming talent, and they also have some nice young players on their team, such as Scooter Gennett. They have a good closer in Rafael Iglesias, who I think is going to eventually be traded. Eugenio Suarez turned out to be a great find for Cincinnati, too. The Cleveland Indians should be thankful that they have one of the best pitching staffs in the game. Yes, there's a chance that some of these players might be traded this offseason, but they're all still on their roster for now, and they should be thankful for that. The Colorado Rockies should be thankful that they have a good manager in Bud Black and a nice young core led by Nolan Arenado. The Detroit Tigers should be thankful. Yeah, they're rebuilding. It'll be a while. They should be thankful that they have a lot of great young pitching in the minors. Yes, not everybody pans out, but some of them should absolutely pan out. The Houston Astros should be thankful because they have a great core led by Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, and George Springer, and a good manager in A.J. Hinch. The Kansas City Royals, like the Orioles, it's going to take a long time for them to get back to being relevant, but their farm system is improving thanks to hitting on some draft picks. The Los Angeles Angels should be thankful because Mike Trout's on their roster. The Los Angeles Dodgers should be thankful because they have great ownership led by Magic Johnson that's willing to spend money, and a great front office led by Andrew Friedman that's willing to improve the team year after year to keep themselves in contention. The Miami Marlins are like the Orioles and the Royals in the sense that it's going to be a while, but they should be thankful because they have some blossoming young players such as Brian Anderson, and maybe Lewis Brinson will turn out to be good too. And they have some great players in the farm such as Victor Mesa, which was a big get for that organization. The Milwaukee Brewers should be thankful because they have the reigning National League MVP in Christian Yelich. The Minnesota Twins should be thankful because they have a promising young core that really hasn't shown much consistency yet, but maybe it will, led by Jose Barrios, Byron Buxton, and Miguel Sano. The New York Mets should be thankful because they have the best pitcher in the game on their team in Jacob deGrom. The New York Yankees should be thankful because they're always willing to go out and improve their team year after year like the Dodgers and have the best GM in the game in Brian Cashman. The Oakland Athletics should be thankful because they have the most underrated GM and manager in the game in Billy Beane and Bob Melvin. The Philadelphia Phillies should be thankful for their young core led by Rhys Hoskins and their ownership willing to spend some money. The Pittsburgh Pirates should be thankful for their promising young core that they have with some guys still left to come, such as Mitch Keller down in the minors. And they have an underrated manager in Clint Hurdle. The St. Louis Cardinals should be thankful. Like the Yankees and the Dodgers, this ownership and front office is always willing to improve their team, not willing to sacrifice bad years, and always looking to be creative in things that they do. The San Diego Padres should be thankful for the best farm system in the game. This is an up-and-coming team within the next couple years. Wouldn't be shocked if this is one of the biggest surprises in baseball in the 2019 season. The San Francisco Giants, for right now, should be thankful that they have a championship core still on their hands, although in reality they should really blow it up because they had back-to-back disastrous seasons. The Seattle Mariners should be thankful with a smart GM in Jerry DiPoto that knows what he's doing, even though things haven't really worked out for him in Seattle and they've missed on some free agents and whatnot, even though some of them weren't DiPoto's. But DiPoto is one of the better GMs in the game, and the Mariners should be relevant again someday soon, maybe even before the Orioles and teams like that. The Tampa Bay Rays should be thankful for a great manager in Kevin Cash, who always gets his team to play at a high level and almost made the playoffs this year. Probably would have made it if not for a slow start. They probably would have been playing the Yankees in the wild card game and probably would have started Blake Snell. Maybe they advance far. The Texas Rangers, tough one because they're in a rough situation right now. Should be thankful that they have a nice little core to build around unless they don't trade any of these pieces, such as Jurickson Profar and Joey Gallo. They have some promising guys in the minors. They also have Ronald Guzman, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who showed flashes last year. The Toronto Blue Jays should be thankful for Vlad Guerrero Jr. He's the best prospect in baseball, and he's going to be on their team next year and will be the overwhelming favorite for the American League Rookie of the Year award, along with Chicago's Eloy Jimenez. And the Washington Nationals should be thankful for their young core led by Juan Soto, Victor Robles, who will be in the big leagues next year, Trey Turner, Anthony Rendon, and they also have a good pitching staff led by Max Scherzer and Steven Strasburg. Yeah, they might lose Bryce Harper, but they shouldn't struggle next year with the talent they have on the roster. Quickly before I go, I'm going to make my picks for tonight's college football games. Only 2 games on the slate. Northern Illinois and Western Michigan. I'm taking the road team here in Northern Illinois. They've been hot of late. They're laying 6.5, but I'm taking over 51. Ball State and Miami of Ohio. I'm taking Miami of Ohio to win, but Ball State to cover the 17.5. I think 17.5 is too much for Miami of Ohio to be giving, even though they're home, and they need this game to clinch a bowl spot. I'll be doing the rest of the picks for the weekend tomorrow on the podcast, as well as doing memories for NBA and NHL. And last but not least, now I'm going to go with Best Bet. I'm going to make it a FanDuel sponsor today. Raptors and Blazers in the NBA, Serbia in soccer, Sharks in the NHL, UConn, Notre Dame, James Madison, Penn State, Minnesota, and San Diego in college hoops, plus 838 with risking $1.50. I should say $1.51 to be frank, to win $12.66 with the payout of $14.17. That's it today. I'll be back tomorrow. Hope you guys have a good one, everyone.